Are you surprised by the evidence that's already coming out in the criminal trial?
No, I'm not surprised. I experienced some of those things. Witnessed violence.
Picture this. We squeeze into that marble-walled courtroom, shoulder to shoulder with reporters, jurors fidgeting under buzzing lights, when the temperature shifts in an instant. 1 second, Sean Diddy Combs is whispering with counsel. The next, we see him bolt upright, eyes locked on Cassie's suited advocate across the aisle. Chairs screech, papers flutter, and then it happens. He surges forward, like a linebacker at kickoff. We swear we hear the pop of knuckles before we even register the blur of movement. A stunned gasp ripples through the gallery as Diddy's fist arcs straight into the lawyer's jaw, snapping the poor man's glasses clean off. The crack echoes, the gavel bangs, and for a heartbeat, the entire chamber is frozen. Mouths open, breathing suspended, while the judge's face turns the color of a warning flare.
Incredible. And, it brings into context our whole system of innocent until proven guilty. Why is he not being given bond? And, we can debate that all day long. Of all people that's unlikely to flee or get away, well, he's got the resources to flee, but he's so recognizable. And isn't he innocent until proven guilty? Well, yeah, but, we have to recognize there are degrees of innocent until proven guilty.
Before security can scramble, Diddy's already hauling the stunned attorney by the lapels, hurling accusations about betrayal and pay-for-play testimonies. We can practically feel his breath with each guttural shout. A deputy lunges, but Diddy jukes left, and in that microsecond, a second jab lands. A jab so quick we almost wonder if we dreamed it, until the lawyer's knees give out and he collapses, papers scattering like confetti at the world's most disastrous parade. The court reporter drops her stenotype. Jurors flinch as spittle, or is it blood, dots the polished floor. The judge slams the gavel a second, then a third time, roaring for order, but the courtroom has already entered a nightmare loop, every shout ricocheting against marble.
It's a legitimate concern. No judge wants to wake up and read the headlines the next day, oh, they treated this guy special and they gave him bond, and now he's gone and he fled from justice. So that's what's in the back of most judges' minds. On the other hand, we deal with cases where clients have significant funds sometimes. And sometimes where there's money, you can craft a unique solution. Years ago, it was the ankle bracelet and the ankle monitor.
We watch the bailiffs finally swarm, wrestling Diddy away while he thrashes like a man possessed. His cufflinks glint under fluorescent lights, his silk tie now pulled halfway over one shoulder, dangling like a defeated flag. Somewhere behind us, a spectator sobs. Somewhere else, a phone clicks furtively, hoping to snatch the viral shot that will set social feeds ablaze. The judge, her robe fluttering, storms down from the bench, jaw clenched so tight her words escape through grinding teeth. We can't repeat exactly what she mutters, but it's the kind of language that suggests career-ending contempt citations are about to land like hailstones. Only after Diddy is finally pinned against the paneled wall, wrists restrained, do we hear the wounded attorney groan, dazed eyes blinking behind crooked frames. Paramedics materialize like stagehands after a stunt gone wrong, but the real drama is unfolding in the judge's chambers, audible even through heavy oak doors. We catch snippets, contempt, revocation, public menace. 20 minutes of exercise are enough, and suddenly the smart money in the press row shifts from a calculated plea bargain to the possibility of a much longer sentence. The prosecution looks vindicated, defense counsel looks shell-shocked, and jurors stare at their shoes as if hoping floor tiles might transport them anywhere but here.
So maybe some solution where his money could help us craft, he could build his separate jail cell, and we could keep him there. Just interesting to me that they sort of said, nope, you're gonna be treated not like everybody else, but a lot like everybody else. Having money doesn't do it. So I wouldn't want to be those judges. There's sort of a no-win situation.
The fallout is immediate and radioactive. Legal analysts outside sprint for cameras, spitting out hot takes about unbridled aggression and fatal blows to credibility. One veteran commentator huffs that such an outburst could trigger an obstruction enhancement, maybe even nudge sentencing guidelines from years to decades. Another hints darkly that the judge's fury might eclipse any sympathy his racial bias argument once commanded. And yes, Diddy's team had been leaning hard on that card. No white person has ever been the target of a remotely similar prosecution, they argued in last week's filing. But we wonder, does that line still carry punch after a headline-making courtroom smackdown? Because let's be honest, this feels less like a momentary lapse and more like a mob flick come alive. Was Diddy simply cracking under pressure? Or was he sending a louder-than-words signal? We've already heard whispers that Cassie's counsel had been catching veiled warnings for weeks. Anonymous calls, shadowy figures parked near his townhouse, late-night envelopes holding nothing but blank USB sticks. Paranoid fantasy? Maybe. Yet every rumor finds new legs now that the man at the center of them has literally thrown his own.
They're going to try everything. They're going to try to transfer him. They're going to try to get him out. In a normal case where it's a high-profile person or a well-funded person, the prosecution and the judge is a little bit more concerned about a wrongful prosecution, because people that are mad that they're being arrested for a crime they didn't commit can turn around and file for malicious prosecution.
Dig a little deeper and the whispers grow darker. One source we'll simply call Midnight J, a studio runner with access to more mixing boards than morals, claims someone in Diddy's orbit floated hush money offers north of 7 figures to key witnesses. Another insider swears the same attorney who hit the floor had already reported attempted cyber intrusions, someone prying into cloud backups for confidential case notes. And let's not ignore those hints about quiet intimidation tactics. Anonymous bouquets showing up at witnesses' doors with single black lilies, ominous enough to chill anyone's spine. We'd think all of that was wild conspiracy if not for the timing of Diddy's eruption. 1 hour before fists flew, prosecutors filed a sealed motion rumored to involve surveillance footage of private marathons with hired night companions, footage Diddy allegedly kept on encrypted drives. The rumor mill insists those drives contain more than just grainy hotel suite snapshots. We're talking full-blown multi-camera productions that could make even hardened jurors squirm. Word is, the tech expert who cracked the encryption was preparing to testify under Cassie's lawyer's direct questioning. And if true, that means the man Diddy punched was about to unveil the exact evidence that could collapse any notion of consensual playdates. Meanwhile, behind bulletproof glass and steel bars, Diddy's defense line keeps mutating. One day they argue racial targeting under that Dusty Mann Act. The next they pivot to claims of jealous ex-lovers chasing paydays. After today's melee, commentators compare the strategy to juggling flaming torches during a windstorm, and still, through all that spin, we find ourselves replaying a 2-word text buried in thousands of exhibits. Girl, stop. He fired it off when one ex tried to quit the late-night carousel. It's a short phrase, almost casual, but after watching him crack a lawyer's jaw, it resonates like a warning.
I think that even if we don't know our parents, we still have their DNA in us. We have their genes, and I have this hustler's mentality, his hustler spirit, his drive, his determination, his swag.
We can't overlook the judge's blistering private rebuke either. Sources slip out of Chambers' paleface, describing language fit for a sailor tour. A contempt hearing looms, and the bail pending appeal looks like vapor. Even Diddy's own bodyguards are whispering Plan B, with one telling us off record that this spiral makes the 2001 club shootout look like ping pong. We're not sure that qualifies as comfort. Yet the rabbit hole stretches further. Federal investigators are rumbling about confiscated studio hard drives labeled simply summer mixes, though insiders swear they're anything but music. Imagine hours of lavish soirees where no phone cameras were allowed, yet overhead dome cams kept rolling under Diddy's explicit orders. Why would a man famous for controlling his brand archive such compromising footage? Vanity? Insurance? Blackmail? We don't know, but we hear prosecutors are connecting names, timestamps, and money transfers in a digital lattice that points straight to racketeering. If these so-called secret tapes jump from rumor to evidence, the courtroom brawl could look like a slap on the wrist compared to the legal supernova coming. Still, let's not miss the personal stakes. Cassie, who once serenaded crowds with buttery vocals, now sits in protective anonymity, escorted by U.S. Marshals after dusk. The intimidation she described, black SUVs idling outside her mother's condo, unknown numbers texting midnight threats, suddenly reads less like paranoia and more like a dress rehearsal for today's violence. And as we watch Diddy's polished image fray thread by thread, we have to ask, is the empire finally cracking under its own weight? Or are we witnessing the desperate tactics of a mogul who feels the walls closing in?
Diddy will be sued, and I say will be because nothing has been filed yet, by at least 120 people in the next 30 days.
Because this spectacle isn't confined to 4 courtroom walls. Streaming platforms debate pulling his catalog, sponsors freeze partnerships, and even rival artists, some who once circled his orbit like moths to a gold-plated flame, start scrubbing old collabs from playlists. But the biggest ripple might be the FBI Cyber Forensics Division now poking through offshore servers after a midnight warrant. Rumor says they're hunting for backups of those very tapes, plus transactional ledgers tied to hush agreements disguised as consulting retainers. One agent, maybe loose-lipped, maybe strategic, mutters to a reporter that you don't pay 7-figure consulting fees for someone whose only expertise is silence. Chilling, right? And through it all, we can't shake the mental freeze frame of that first punch. An image so raw, so unfiltered, it captures the combustible cocktail of fame, fear, and ego better than 1,000 witness statements. It tells us this saga is no longer about distant allegations, but about live wire volatility that can erupt anywhere, even under oath, under cameras, under the judge's stern glare. It hints that the courtroom violence might be a mere spark compared to the wildfire fanned by those mysterious recordings and the whispered threats behind them. So we linger on that cliff edge, hearts thumping, ears ringing with the judge's gavel and the attorney's pained groan, knowing the storm has only just begun. But before we can even let that freeze frame settle, a far bigger tremor rumbles through the gossip underground. Here's the whispered headline circulating in velvet rope circles. A hidden chamber, a so-called panic room, buried deep inside one of Diddy's skyscraper mansions. We're told the room sits behind a motorized bookcase and is lined wall-to-wall with titanium safes. Inside those safes, according to two independent insiders, one a former security contractor, the other a disgruntled audio engineer, lies an archive of private footage so incendiary it makes that courtroom outburst look like nursery play. Picture multi-camera coverage of the infamous freak-offs we've heard about in testimony, complete with surround sound audio capturing every coerced promise, every whispered threat, every moment that federal prosecutors have been struggling to prove, or it is. The FBI seized at least 3 encrypted hard drives from that stronghold during a hush-hush pre-dawn raid, slipping out with gear packed into plain black Pelican cases before dawn's first joggers even laced up.
What does that tell you? I would have thought Diddy would be throwing all his celebrity mates under the bus.
I mean, that could potentially be coming when it's time for court and when it's time for him to testify. But what we're seeing right now is how important public relations really are to Sean Combs. He's desperately trying to control the narrative behind bars, allowing his attorneys to do
We hear the agents who cracked those drives needed a custom script to break the military-grade lockout. And when they finally got past layer after layer of ciphers, the timestamps stretched back 15 years. Imagine the kind of leverage a mogul could hold by filling every illicit party night and cataloging names, faces, and whispered bargains. According to our source, let's call her Canary, a former digital archivist, some of those files allegedly open with Diddy's voice dictating the rules of each gathering, barking instructions like a movie director on a closed set. Others capture quivering participants glancing nervously into the lens as if they know those frames will one day haunt them. And then there's the real goosebumper, short audio clips labeled Insurance A, Insurance B, Insurance C, each no longer than 60 seconds, each featuring what sounds suspiciously like intimidation rhetoric that could make even hardened music execs clutch their pearls.
What his team is trying to do is get the public to assume that the government is leaking some of this negative information about him, like that Cassie video. But the reality is, he's got a lot of enemies, and I really don't believe it's.
If prosecutors can authenticate that trove, they won't just have scandal, they'll have timeline, intent, and voice prints. That means the meltdown we witnessed in court may not even crack the top 3 reasons Diddy now faces the legal equivalent of a Category 5 hurricane. We've learned a special evidentiary hearing looms in which federal tech wizards will demonstrate frame-by-frame synchronization between the panic room tapes and flight logs, hotel key entries, and payment records already introduced at trial. Picture a prosecutor queuing up a clip where Diddy sets ground rules for an out-of-state companion for hire, then pivoting to a bank statement showing a 5-figure wire hours later. Same date, same hotel, same faces. It's the connective tissue the jury has been yearning for, a digital bridge between rumor and charge sheets. No wonder then that the defense scrambled into emergency strategy mode within minutes of those seizure leaks. Our courthouse mole spotted 4 junior associates sprinting down the marble corridor, arms overloaded with manila folders, while senior counsel barked into headsets about reassessing tone. The shift was immediate. The next brief hammered relentlessly on racial bias, funneling the public narrative towards systemic injustice. They lifted their own line from a Tuesday filing, "No white person has ever been the target of a remotely similar prosecution," and blared it across every morning news slot willing to hand them airtime. The subtext? A powerful black entrepreneur is being crucified for behavior that they claim the music industry quietly condones in paler boardrooms.
Came here today just to tell the truth, so hopefully we can get down to the bottom of this. I'm 100%, the charges against me are 100% false, and hopefully due to time, we'll start to see that.
We can't ignore the emotional electricity of that argument. After all, the Mann Act's original title, the White Slave Traffic Act, drips with historical malice. But critics fire back that repurposing a civil rights shield as a get-out-of-jail card trivializes real bias. Cable news panels light up night after night with pundits sparring over whether Diddy is a victim of racial profiling or a master of diversion. Activist attorneys remind viewers the lead prosecutor himself is black. Defenders counter that institutional prejudice can hide behind any face, any badge. The hashtag selective prosecution trends, then flips to selective sympathy, as survivors' advocates flood timelines with first-person accounts. We watch a digital tug-of-war where every retweet seems to sharpen battle lines instead of shedding light.
Cassie said that she was the victim of abuse, sexual assault, and at the hands of Diddy.
Meanwhile, corporate CEOs who once clamored for a selfie with the mogul now cling to silence. We hear one global beverage giant has quietly pulled promotional banners featuring his grin from half a thousand storefronts, replacing them with generic pop art overnight. Another telecom brand supposedly hit the pause button on a multi-million-dollar partnership renewal, ringing up crisis management consultants instead of ad agencies. Streaming platforms face a classic catch-22. Keep his catalog up and risk consumer fury, or pull it and trigger contractual firestorms that could cost tens of millions of dollars in royalties. Behind closed doors, lawyers debate morality clause contingencies, while spreadsheet jockeys calculate how many subscribers might bail if they feel their nostalgia playlists just got censored. And let's talk about rumors swirling around those masters. Insiders whisper that Diddy attempted a discreet sale of certain catalog rights months before his arrest, as if anticipating a liquidity crunch. One hedge fund contact hints at a proposed 9-figure deal that fizzled when due diligence teams flagged reputational landmines. Imagine if that sale had gone through. We might now be watching callous investors profit from an archive packed with hits about sparkling dreams, songs that could soon become courtroom exhibits. Instead, the masters sit in legal limbo, potential collateral the feds might seize to cover gargantuan restitution claims if guilty verdicts land.
We are not done. This investigation is ongoing, and I encourage anyone with information about this case to come forward and to do it quickly.
And while the boardrooms dither, Cassie and the other accusers huddle under U.S. Marshals' watch, their testimonies now bolstered by digital echo. We hear that one recording from the panic room's stash includes audio of a weeping voice pleading, "Please stop," while Diddy calmly instructs, "Let the camera roll." If true, it torches any remaining argument that these were consensual adult escapades. Add to that the earlier text we saw, "Girls stop," and the prosecution suddenly wields a narrative arc so stark even Hollywood scriptwriters might call it heavy-handed. Yet nothing in this saga feels fictional to the women at its center. They're bracing for cross-exams designed to paint them as gold diggers, but every new leak hands them a shield of corroboration we doubt the defense expected.
A U.S. judge has ruled that the rapper and producer Sean Diddy Combs will stand trial on federal sex trafficking and racketeering charges in May. He'll be held in prison until then. Sean Combs has pleaded not guilty to charges that he used his business empire to transport women and male workers across state lines to take part in recorded performances. If convicted, he could face a life sentence.
Then there's the money trail, that serpentine flow of dollars through shell LLCs in Delaware, Wyoming, and the Cayman Islands. Investigators reportedly tied at least 2 of those entities to hush agreement payouts disguised as creative consulting retainers. One 6-figure transfer surfaced mere days after a witness first threatened civil action back in 2022. Another funneled euros via Luxembourg to a PR fixer who, sources claim, was tasked with scrubbing photo metadata from paparazzi agencies. We're talking aerospace-level obfuscation, dummy addresses, NAMI directors, even a phantom courier service whose listed phone number loops to a disconnected voicemail. If forensic accountants connect those dots on the stand, expect jurors to see not only premeditation but a sprawling enterprise built on pay to forget. We peel back one more velvet curtain and discover a logistics machine so polished it could rival the backstage crew of a stadium tour. Insiders say every so-called freak-off began with an encrypted group chat run by a senior aide who matched luxury hotel availability with the private jet schedule, then pushed a hush-marked itinerary to burner phones, handed out at an underground parking garage in BH, individual room keys, pre-registered to shell corporations, awaited in monogrammed envelopes, while scent diffusers were piped in ahead of arrival to erase any trace of previous occupants. It's the kind of meticulous micro-planning that costs more than some indie films, yet it ensured nobody outside the inner circle could map who checked in, who checked out, or why the penthouse minibar required restocking with jaw-dropping frequency.
To see him several times a day. And now there's talk about putting him in, it's like a bubble. It's like a cell that has like a plexiglass wall in it where they have inmates watching you. That's actually their job, to keep an eye on the inmates that are on watch.
Hovering at the center of this apparatus is the infamous Cowboys for Angels agency, glamorized by a long-running cable reality series, but whispered about in court filings as a clearinghouse for exclusive companionship. Company insiders claim direct bookings rarely came through standard channels. Instead, a call from Diddy's chief concierge triggered a closed-door vetting process where appearance, discretion, and adaptability were scored with ruthless precision. Background checks allegedly dug deeper than some government clearances, scouring social feeds for any hint of rogue live streaming habits. In return, each companion for hire reportedly received a go bag at LAX, per diem cash, a prepaid rideshare card, and non-disclosure paperwork thicker than many first novels.
Okay, some people do think that Diddy can help him, but this guy's going to be locked up forever. His case will probably take at least 3 years to litigate. He'll stay at MDC. There's rumors that he wants to go to Essex County Jail in New Jersey because he doesn't like MDC. He's a Marshals inmate. There's no way they're going to transfer him back and forth, I don't know, several times a week.
But hotel suites don't prep themselves, and that's where a rotating brigade of personal assistants enters. We're told these junior staffers, often hungry industry hopefuls, handled the groundwork. They secured rare imported candles to mask controlled substance odors, stocked mini fridges with exotic mixers, and kept an inventory of high thread count linens meant to be tossed rather than laundered. One former assistant confided to investigators that she filed reimbursement slips labeled creative staging for invoices that were plainly room service tips, big enough to fund a semester at UCLA. Each receipt passed through a finance department coach to rubber stamp anything tied to artist hospitality, no questions asked. Outside the suite doors, a silent phalanx of private security formed the next concentric ring. They weren't the stereotypical bodyguards in flashy suits, think plainclothes operatives with earbuds and discreet holsters, hired from boutique firms specializing in hotel floor lockdowns. Their unofficial brief: intercept hall cameras, reroute housekeeping staff, and ensure that any uninvited guest, whether an eager fan or a nosy reporter, never reached the elevator bank. Former guards, now talking under partial immunity, describe receiving sealed envelopes of crisp $100 bills before and after each assignment, a gratuity for effortless confidentiality.
Those individuals allegedly included high-ranking supervisors in the business, personal assistants, security staff, and household staff.
Then comes the airborne shuttle service. Flight manifests show Diddy's G-Series jet ping-ponging between MIA, VEG, and NYC on suspiciously short hops, often under call signs linked to obscure holding companies. Aviation trackers note tail number changes executed mid-ownership cycle, a tactic favored by covert ops contractors but rarely necessary for pop culture royalty. Pair those maneuvers with ground transfers in unmarked Sprinter vans, and the portrait emerges of a talent agency reinventing itself as a clandestine transit pipeline. Slick, swift, and almost invisible on paper, hotel partnerships completed the circle. Several five-star chains reportedly offered black-level privacy packages, entire floors rented at balloon prices, keycard elevators disabled for all but pre-cleared badges, and housekeeping instructed to swap linens only after checkout regardless of spillage. One top-tier property even provided a laundry chute that dropped directly into a shredding facility, perfect for erasing monogram towels and any DNA trace. Membership in those programs required astronomical deposits, yet spreadsheets indicate Diddy's production entity shelled out deposits twice the standard fee, buying not just discretion, but loyalty.
I think it's to be expected, just the shock of this and the questions about what is ahead of us. I mean, how long is he going to be in custody? Is this an R. Kelly situation? Is he going to not get out for a number of years? Is he going to end up serving a long-term prison sentence from this? Or does he have a chance of beating these charges at a trial that could come, within the next...
Financial compliance teams within those establishments are now bracing for subpoenas. Prosecutors will want to know why multiple cash deliveries bypass the usual wire transfer audit trails. The rumor mill suggests Bell captains sometimes wheeled trunks so heavy they needed 2 men, trunks rumored to contain everything from lighting rigs to sealed bundles of cash rubber-banded in $50,000 stacks. If service workers start flipping, jurors may soon hear about late-night counting sessions in storage closets while playlists boomed through the suite walls.
It's a question of that, but when you read through the indictment, it's pretty clear who could be indicted as a co-conspirator. Right now, there are people in the indictment who would be considered unnamed co-conspirators, but clearly have played a role in this conspiracy. And I think prosecutors have some big leverage on them because they're hoping that they testify against Diddy as prosecution witnesses.
Yet the ecosystem didn't thrive on cash alone. It thrived on fear of being frozen out of future gigs. Nightlife promoters knew a single leak could cost them a year's income. Stylists were warned that a misplaced Instagram story would see them blacklisted by half the industry. Even the companions for hire faced a carrot and stick. Generous bonuses wired to offshore neobanks if they stayed silent, threatened breach fees if they didn't. And hanging over everyone was the knowledge that panic room footage existed, a digital sword of Damocles ready to ruin anyone who talked first. All eyes now shift to whether prosecutors will widen the net to charge facilitators. The Mann Act counts anyone aiding transportation for illicit purposes, and conspiracy statutes love a paper trail. Assistants who booked flights, accountants who disguised retainers, hotel managers who provided dummy aliases. Each could find themselves pivoting from witness to suspect. We've already seen junior staff seek separate counsel, a telltale sign they know the storm could swallow more than its headline star.
So yesterday, Monday, Diddy celebrated his 55th birthday, but this year was a lot different. It was no Diddy parties. It was none of that. None of that stuff. Well, happily, so I guess right now. But anyway, so this is his first birthday behind bars.
Context matters too. This isn't the first celebrity empire to rely on a secret-keeping scaffold, but the scale here borders on industrial. Analysts compare it to organized crime structures, compartmentalized teams bound by cash and compromise. If investigators break even one level of that chain, the domino effect could expose co-conspirators across entertainment, real estate, and even television production, giving Cowboys 4 Angels scripted reality pedigree. Suddenly, cameo appearances from long-ago episodes could morph into Exhibit A, and let's not forget the potential civil aftershocks. Class action specialists are sniffing around, calculating whether former staffers can sue for emotional duress tied to enabling exploitative acts. Insurance carriers might balk at coverage if claims cite willful misconduct. When that happens, the cost of a single hush payment could ripple into 8-figure policy disputes, dragging directors and officers into the mess. We're watching the embryonic stage of a mega litigation wave, where the real casualties might be the mid-tier enablers who lacked the resources to say no.
Wait a minute, say that again. Say that again, back up. You're saying that there's tapes and they're being shopped?
Yes, there have been people already shopping.
We've heard about the tapes, but
yes.
The shopping thing is
Yes, there already have been tapes leaking around Hollywood, being shopped around to individuals in Hollywood. But one particular person contacted me to shop a particular video they were in possession of.
By spotlighting the machinery behind the mayhem, we expose how Diddy's alleged misconduct was never a solo act. It relied on a web of aides, firms, and venues, each cog turning smoothly until subpoenas jammed the gears. And as jurors ride this escalator from personal excess to corporate complicity, the narrative stops being about one man's night habits and starts interrogating an entire ecosystem that profited from silence. And yet, high above the legal crossfire, we sense a cultural reckoning zooming in. Artists once signed to his label are dusting off dusty memories, deciding whether to speak now or stay silent. Media professors debate whether the glamorous bad boy persona the industry once cheered was really a cautionary tale hiding in plain sight. Younger fans, born too late for the 90s club scene, watch TikTok recaps in disbelief, learning that the man who gave them shiny anthems may have used those royalties to bankroll nights of exploitation. The question echoes across live streams. Can we separate the beat from the behavior, the swagger from the shattered boundaries?
that fact in of itself is a big deal, because when you're talking about going back in time and talking about these allegations from other alleged victims, you know, there's not a lot of police reports, but you guys actually have one. And is that going to be revealed? Are we going to be able to see it?
Yes, as soon as I file my lawsuit in civil court, I will be attaching the...
All of which funnels back to that furious judge, robes still figuratively billowing from the brawl. Court insiders hint she's considering a full remand to solitary to prevent further witness intimidation, plus a contempt sanction heavy enough to dent even a mogul's war chest. Meanwhile, rumor has it prosecutors might seek an upward departure, citing violent courtroom conduct as evidence of ongoing danger. If the panic room tapes land in evidence, expect sentencing guidelines to skyrocket. We could be staring at decades, maybe life. That prospect has Diddy's camp telephoning crisis consultants who specialize in worst-case optics, a euphemism for scenarios where the cell door clings and the brand value plunges straight off a cliff.
Today in a New York federal courtroom, Sean Diddy Combs told the judge he was, quote, a little nervous. The rap mogul's criminal trial began this morning. He is trafficking, racketeering, and more.
Yet, amid the looming legal collapse, don't underestimate a mogul's instinct for survival. We've seen elite fixers attempt 11th-hour miracles, sealed settlements, surprise witness retractions, even jurisdictional rabbit holes. And remember, the defense's racial bias argument isn't just courtroom fodder. It's performing double duty on the public stage, rallying fan loyalty, muddying waters, buying sympathy. The longer the conversation centers on systemic prejudice, the less oxygen remains for the raw allegations themselves. That's strategic distraction at its most ruthless, and we've watched it shift verdicts before. Still, every strategy has an expiration date, and this one may hit the wall when those panic room files hit the projection screen. Imagine a jury leaning forward as a video plays, a hotel suite bathed in amber light, a lineup of trembling companions for hire, Diddy's unmistakable voice calibrating every move, In that moment, legal gymnastics fade, hashtags shrivel, and a straightforward human reaction takes over. Are we witnessing consensual nightlife, theatrics, or coercion, manipulation, exploitation? The unblinking lens rarely lies, and according to insiders, there are hours of it.
The judge is hopeful that that could be concluded as soon as Wednesday, with opening statements in the case beginning next week, and then the beginning of the evidence. So Combs has pleaded not guilty. He has said, his lawyers have said, that all of these allegations are the prosecutors trying to criminalize his sexual activity that they say was entirely consensual.
So buckle up, because we feel the final act rumbling in the distance like storm clouds over a summer festival. Pre-sentencing reports, potential asset freezes, record label tremors, influencer culture rewiring itself on the fly. Every domino teeters, and the slightest nudge could flatten an empire that once looked bulletproof. The only unknown is which domino falls first, and whether it triggers collapse or simply reveals deeper rot waiting underneath. And now, as we hover on the edge of the next courtroom eruption, we leave you with this pulse-pounding question. If the panic room tapes truly surface, will they shatter the defense and expose a decades-long reign of fear? Or will Diddy spin yet another narrative, turning scandal into sympathy? Drop your hottest theory in the comments. Smash that follow for the minute-by-minute twists we're tracking. And remember, truth moves fast, but gossip moves faster. Until the next jaw-dropping update, we're out. Stay bold, stay curious, and keep those eyes wide open.